Kenzie, I've got this new app idea that's going to revolutionize everything, Jack declared, eyes glued to his phone. I laughed, placing a hand on his shoulder. Of course you do, Mr. Genius. Just don't forget to revolutionize our anniversary plans, too. Jack barely looked up. Yeah. Sorry, just one sec. Gotta reply to this email. As I watched him tap away, a twinge of unease crept in. Jack and I always celebrated our milestones grandly, and he was never this distracted before. I brushed off the thought, pushing the unease aside. Our lives were perfect. We had shared dreams, flourishing careers, and a bond that seemed unbreakable. Weeks passed, and Jack's absorption in his phone grew. He had become a fixture in his office late into the night. One evening, after returning from work, I found him still on his phone. "Dinner's ready," I called, setting the table. Jack mumbled something incoherent, still focused on his screen. I sighed, louder than intended. He finally looked up, offering a weak smile. "Just finishing up some work stuff." "More emails?" I couldn't hide the sarcasm in my voice. Jack sighed. "Kenzie, it's complicated. Just trust me." "Trust you?" "That's the thing, Jack. It's hard to trust someone who's always hiding behind a screen." He stood up, approaching the table. "I'm not hiding anything. Work's just demanding right now. We'll celebrate once things calm down." I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Something felt off, an undercurrent of tension I couldn't ignore. Another late night. I woke to an empty bed, Jack nowhere in sight. I tiptoed down the stairs, peeking into his home office. There he was, whispering into his phone. "Jack, it's almost midnight," I interrupted. He jumped, sliding his phone into his pocket. "Go back to sleep, Kenzie." Now my curiosity was piqued. "Who were you talking to?" "Just a client from another time zone. You know how it is." His tone was defensive, making my suspicion grow stronger. I crossed my arms. "Do I?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're overthinking this, Kenzie. Go to bed." Reluctantly I did, but the seeds of doubt were firmly planted. The next morning at breakfast, Jack barely touched his food. "Busy day?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light. "Yeah. Got a big project in the works. Sorry if I seem distant." The apology was half-hearted. "Maybe we should plan a weekend getaway," I suggested. "Could do us some good." He nodded absent-mindedly. "Sure, sounds nice." But his lack of enthusiasm was evident. Our seemingly perfect life was beginning to show cracks, and a gnawing feeling in my gut told me things were about to get worse. I decided to talk to Mia, my best friend, at lunch later that day. If anyone could offer perspective, it was her. Yet a part of me already knew I wasn't overthinking. The perfect illusion was crumbling, and buried beneath it lay truths that would soon unravel our lives. I met Mia at our usual lunch spot, a cozy cafe downtown. We ordered our usual chicken salad for me and a turkey club for her. As comfortable as our routine was, an uncomfortable feeling loomed over me. "Everything okay, Kenz?" Mia asked, taking a sip of her iced tea. "Jack's been acting strange. He's always on his phone, working late. It doesn't feel right." Mia gave me a sympathetic look. "Maybe it's just work stress. You know how demanding tech can be." "Maybe," I replied, though I wasn't convinced. Just then, my eyes caught a familiar figure outside the cafe window. Jack. He was standing close to a young woman, laughing, his arm around her waist. My heart sank. "Mia," I said sharply, interrupting her mid-sentence. "Look." She turned to follow my gaze and gasped. "Is that—" "Jack," I confirmed softly, "and he's not alone." We both watched as Jack leaned in to kiss the woman. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just a work thing. It was something far more painful. Mia shook her head in disbelief. "Kenzie, I'm so sorry." I stood abruptly, determined to confront him. Mia grabbed my arm. "No, not here. Wait till you have him alone." Chomping down my initial impulse, I nodded. "You're right, but that," I pointed out the window, "isn't just anyone. That's Paige." Her eyes widened. "My daughter, Paige? No way. She's only 24. What the hell is going on?" "I wish I knew," I said through gritted teeth. "I'll find out tonight." Dinner was a silent affair, tension hanging like a storm cloud. Jack poked at his food, clearly distracted. "Who was she?" I finally blurted out. Jack looked up, feigning confusion. "Who?" "Don't who me. Paige, I saw you with her today." His face hardened. "Kenzie, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. Jack pushed his chair back and stood up. "Fine. You want the truth? Paige and I are seeing each other." It felt like the floor dropped from beneath me. "You're seeing my best friend's daughter? How could you?" I'm tired of this life, Jack snapped. I need something new, something exciting. Paige gives me that. I could barely breathe. So you destroy our life for what? A fling? It's more than a fling, he said coldly. I'm done pretending. I stood there, staring at a man I no longer recognized. The silence grew heavy until Jack muttered, I'm staying with Paige tonight. He walked out, leaving me in the ruins of our perfect life. The door slammed, and I broke down, feeling the sting of betrayal cut deep. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a stranger tangled up with a girl half his age. This wasn't just an end, it was a beginning. The beginning of understanding just how deep this betrayal cut and where it would lead me next. I dialed my mother, Evelyn, the next morning, desperate for some sense of clarity. As soon as she picked up, I could barely keep the tears from spilling. Mom, I need to talk to you. Can you come over? Her voice was firm yet concerned. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When she arrived, I could see the worry etched on her face. Kenzie, what's going on? Jack's having an affair, I replied, trying to steady my voice. With Paige. Evelyn's eyes widened in shock. Paige? Mia's daughter? Yes, and he admitted he's leaving me for her. As if on cue, Mia called me. Kenzie, I heard everything. I'm coming over. We need to talk about this face to face. We all gathered in my living room. The tension was palpable. Mia was the first to break the silence. I never thought Paige could do something like this. She's my daughter. How could she betray you, betray us like this? It gets worse, I said. Jack's leaving me for her. He's tired of our life. Evelyn shook her head. Her usual calm rattled. We need to confront them. This can't go on. Before I could respond, the door opened, and in walked Jack and Paige, hand in hand. The audacity of it took my breath away. Well, looks like the party started without us, Paige sneered. How dare you? Mia shouted, stepping forward. You betrayed your own family. Paige shrugged, unfazed. It's not my fault you all are so boring. Jack wants excitement, and I can give him that. Jack stood there, silent but resolute. His presence was like a wall, indifferent and cold. Evelyn, Mia pleaded, say something, please. My mother took a deep breath. Paige, you've always been conniving, but this... I never thought you would stoop so low to destroy your own family. Paige rolled her eyes. Spare me the lecture, Grandma. This isn't about family. It's about what I want, and I'm getting it. You're tearing everything apart, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Jack finally spoke. We're not tearing anything apart that wasn't already broken. I'm done living a lie. So this is it? I asked, desperation clinging to my words. You're choosing this over us? That's right. Paige answered for him, pulling Jack closer. Get used to it. Evelyn stepped forward then. Paige, you're living off a trust fund that's about to run out. What happens when you're broke? Shock rippled across Paige's face, though she quickly masked it. We'll manage, right, Jack? Jack hesitated, the first sign of doubt crossing his face. Think long and hard, Jack, Evelyn continued. Is this really what you want? Jack's silence was deafening, the realization hitting him for the first time. As they turned to leave, the sense of finality settled in. But amidst the heartbreak, there was a small flicker of hope. It was the beginning of a plan, a way to regain control and ensure they would come to regret every single decision they had made. Evelyn and Mia stayed late into the evening, offering support and helping me regain some composure. The reality of my situation made it almost impossible to think clearly. Kenzie, you need to focus on yourself now, Evelyn said firmly, and figure out your next move. I will, but I can't just let them get away with this, I replied, the anger in my voice unmistakable. Mia nodded. We've got to hit them where it hurts. Paige's trust fund is almost gone, and Jack doesn't know that yet. The thought was sobering. I smiled slightly, a plan beginning to form. That's a start, and they'll be penniless soon. Over the next few days, I focused on my job, pouring all my energy into my work. Success would be my revenge. The drive to succeed, combined with the desire for payback, propelled me forward. Each day, the path became clearer. One evening, I needed to relive some of the tension, so I met up with Zoe, my closest friend since college, who worked as a private investigator. If anyone could help dig in deeper, it was her. Zoe, I need your help, I said as we sat down in her office. She took a sip from her coffee and leaned forward. Give me the details. Jack's been cheating on me with Paige, Mia's daughter, I explained quickly. Zoe's brow furrowed. That's messy. What do you want me to do? I need anything and everything you can find. Financials, secrets, there has to be something, I said resolutely. You got it, Zoe replied, grabbing a notepad. I'll get started right away. As Zoe began her investigation, I kept moving ahead. I filed for divorce and focused on climbing the ranks at work. Every success was a small victory, a step towards reclaiming my life. A few days later, Zoe called me. Kenzie, I've got something. Meet me at the cafe. When I arrived, Zoe had a folder ready. Jack's financials are tied up in risky investments, and Paige isn't as squeaky clean as she appears. She's run up a lot of debt, and without that trust fund, she's toast. I felt a grim satisfaction. So they'll hit rock bottom soon. Seems like it, Zoe confirmed. They'll tear each other apart once the money runs dry. At home, I organized the documents and reports Zoe had given me. I would use every bit of this information to ensure they faced the consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, Jack and Paige's relationship started to deteriorate. The financial strain was taking its toll. I heard rumors of their arguments, and it was like a small beacon of justice. Each day, I grew closer to my goal. I could sense their downfall approaching. I would be there, ready to watch it unfold, a fitting end for their betrayal. I knew the time for a dramatic confrontation was nearing, and I was more prepared than ever to face it. The morning after filing for divorce, I felt a strange sense of liberation. It was like I'd cut away the final tether holding me to a life that no longer existed. Jack's reaction had been predictably indifferent when he received the papers. Are you serious, Kenzie? He'd said, briefly looking up from his phone. Is this really necessary? You made it necessary. This is the consequence of your choices, I responded, my voice steady. He shook his head, scoffing as he walked away. His reluctance to acknowledge the gravity of the situation only fueled my resolve. Back in my office, I called Zoe. Can you meet for lunch? I have an idea. At the cafe, we discussed ways to use the information she'd gathered. Jack's partners need to know about his shady financials, Zoe suggested. And Paige's debt. Let's start a little fire and watch it burn, I added. Zoe smirked. I like the way you think. Over the next few weeks, block by block, I built my case. I discreetly provided Jack's partners with evidence of his risky investments. They started distancing themselves, and whispers of mismanagement circulated. Jack was too absorbed in his downward spiral with Paige to notice the backlash coming from his associates. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work. Late nights and hard-fought achievements raised my profile within the company. It wasn't just revenge, it was also about rebuilding my life, on my terms. One evening, on a whim, I called Jack. We need to talk. He sounded suspicious. About what? Meet me at our usual spot, the coffee shop, I said and hung up before he could protest. When he arrived, he looked worn out, shadows under his eyes. So what's this about? How are things with Paige? I kept my tone neutral. Jack sighed. It's complicated. Her trust fund, it's running out soon, isn't it? His eyes widened. You know about that? Of course I do, and the debt she's accumulated. I leaned in. Jack, you left our stable life for this mess. Does she even know? Since when do you care? He retorted, frowning. I don't. I just want you to face the reality you've created, I said, standing up. Good luck with that. Leaving him there, stunned, felt like a small victory. This was far from over. A few days later, Zoe called me, excitement in her voice. Kenzie, I've got something big. Meet me at my office. When I arrived, she handed me another folder. More dirt on Paige. She's been stealing from Jack's business account to pay her debts. I couldn't help but smile. This is exactly what I needed. Ready to pull the trigger? Zoe asked, eyes gleaming. Absolutely, I replied. Let's finish this. I returned home, preparing for the final stage. Jack and Paige were on the brink of ruin, and I was ready to give them the final push. Revenge was no longer just a desire. It was a certainty. And soon, they would face the full consequences of their betrayals. It wasn't long before Jack's world began to crumble. At first, I heard whispers at work about a big fallout between him and several investors. They were pulling out, leaving his latest project hanging by a thread. All the while I watched from a safe distance, quietly relishing each piece of news that slid my way. One night I was working late when my phone buzzed. It was Zoe. You need to hear this, Kenzie. Jack just found out about Paige's secret debts. He is livid. Where are they? I asked, curiosity piqued. They're holed up at their apartment. From what I've heard, things are getting heated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, a stronger part, needed to see the fallout firsthand. I grabbed my coat and drove to their place, staying out of sight but close enough to hear the raised voices echoing through the night. "Paige, what the hell? You spent how much?" Jack's voice was loud and filled with accusation. Paige fired back, equally loud. "Don't act like you're blameless. Your whole company is falling apart because of your bad decisions." Their words cut through the darkness, filled with venom. After a moment, there was a loud crash. Furniture, or maybe a thrown object. Jack burst out of the door, looking wild-eyed and frantic. I ducked behind a car, holding my breath. "Jack, come back here! We're not done!" Paige screamed from the doorway. "Done? We're done when I say we're done!" Jack shouted back, his voice echoing down the empty street. He got into his car and drove off, tires screeching. I followed at a safe distance, curiosity driving me forward. He arrived at my house, of all places. I stayed back, watching with a mix of satisfaction and curiosity as he banged on my door loudly. I waited a moment before stepping into the light. "Kenzie, please, I need to talk to you," he begged as I approached. "What is it, Jack?" I asked, my voice calm. "I can't go back there. It's a disaster. Everything's falling apart," he admitted, looking desperate. "I warned you about this," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I know you did," he said, tears forming in his eyes. "I made a mistake. Please help me." I stared at him for a long moment, feeling a mixture of pity and triumph. "I can't help you. You chose this path." "Kenzie, please." He grabbed my arm, but I stepped back, pulling out my phone. "I think it's time I call the police. You're not thinking rationally." Jack's eyes widened, panic setting in. No, I'm leaving." Just as he turned to go, Paige appeared, wild-eyed and holding something metallic in her hand. "You're not going anywhere, Jack." I quickly dialed 911, explaining the situation as Paige assaulted Jack with a barrage of accusations. Moments later, the police arrived, diffusing the situation and taking Paige away. As the chaos finally settled, I watched Jack being led away in handcuffs. The public exposure, the scandal, it was all over the news by morning. My mother, Evelyn, and I shared a quiet moment, sipping coffee and taking in the headlines. Justice had been served, and I felt a profound sense of closure washing over me. The morning after the chaotic scene at my house, I woke up to my phone buzzing with notifications. News of Jack and Paige's tumultuous fallout had spread like wildfire. Headlines splashed their scandal across every platform. My inbox was flooded with messages from colleagues, friends, even acquaintances who hadn't contacted me in years. Each message was a reminder that the truth had finally surfaced. As I sipped my coffee, my phone rang again. It was Zoe. "Did you see the news?" "I have. Couldn't happen to a nicer couple, right?" I replied, unable to hide my satisfaction. "Reports say Paige has been arrested, and Jack's been detained for questioning. The whole thing looks bad for them." "Good," I said simply. "They deserve every bit of it." A knock on the door interrupted our call. "Hey, I have to go. Someone's at the door." Opening the door, I found myself face to face with two police officers. "Mackenzie Reed?" the taller officer asked. "Yes, that's me," I replied, heart pounding. "We're here in relation to the incident last night. We need to ask you a few questions." I stepped aside to let them in, memories of the chaos replaying in my mind. They asked about Jack's arrival, Paige's outburst, and my call to the police. I answered truthfully, every word bringing a strange sense of finality. After 30 minutes, they nodded and thanked me for my time. "The investigation will proceed," one officer said. "Jack and Paige will both face various charges. If you need any assistance, don't hesitate to reach out." "Thank you, officers," I said as they left, closing the door and exhaling deeply. Evelyn joined me in the kitchen, having overheard the conversation. "Looks like they're finally facing the consequences," she remarked, her voice steady. "It's about time," I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The days that followed were surreal. Jack's professional life crumbled as investors and partners distanced themselves from the scandal. His misconduct became public knowledge, and the cracks in his pristine image grew deeper. At work, I was met with sympathetic glances and hushed conversations. Yet, I remained focused, using the chaos to fuel my determination. A week later, the police called again. Jack was officially charged with embezzlement, and Paige was facing multiple counts of fraud and assault. As I hung up the phone, a sense of closure settled over me. That evening, Evelyn and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. "It's finally over," I said, feeling the release of tension. "Yes, it is," she agreed, "and you handled it all with incredible strength." As we sat in comfortable silence, a figure approached. It was Zoe, carrying a bottle of wine. "Thought this called for a celebration," she said, smiling. "Absolutely," I replied, grateful for my friends and family who stood by me. We toasted to new beginnings, the future bright and filled with possibilities. The nightmare was behind me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I looked forward with hope. Jack and Paige had met their reckoning, and I had emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. The aftermath of Jack and Paige's downfall brought a strange calm to my life. It felt like everything that once weighed me down had been lifted. My focus shifted entirely to my career, and the rewards quickly followed. Promotions, recognition, everything started to fall into place. One afternoon, I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed with a message from Mia. "Let's catch up. Need to talk." We met at the same cafe where my suspicions had first been confirmed. Mia looked visibly drained but determined. "Kenzie, thank you for everything. You handled this whole mess with such grace." I smiled, sipping my coffee. "I couldn't have done it without you and Zoe. How's Paige?" "Her hearing is next month. She's been cut off and has to face the consequences alone," Mia said, sadness and resolution mixing in her voice. "She made her choices," I replied softly. As the weeks turned into months, the legal proceedings took their toll on Jack and Paige. Jack made a few feeble attempts to contact me, but I blocked all his efforts. He was a chapter I was done reading, and I had no intention of going back. One evening, while working late again, a colleague, Mark Adams, knocked on my office door. "Still here, Kenzie?" "Yeah, just wrapping things up. How about you?" "Same. Listen, I was thinking of grabbing a coffee. Care to join?" There was something comforting about Mark. Reliable, kind, genuine. Sure, I could use a break. We walked to a nearby coffee shop, chatting about work, life, and everything in between. Mark's presence was a welcome change, a reminder that not all was tainted by my previous ordeal. Days turned into weeks, and our coffee breaks became more frequent. Mark's support was unwavering, wore a stark contrast to the deception I'd endured. One evening, as we walked back to the office, he stopped and turned to me. "Kenzie, would you consider maybe dinner this weekend?" It caught me off guard, but in a good way. I smiled. "I'd like that, Mark. I'd like that a lot." Our dinner date was a turning point. Conversation flowed easily, laughter came naturally, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. Mark was different, steady, caring, and supportive in a way that Jack had never been. Months passed, and as my relationship with Mark blossomed, I finally felt the scars from Jack and Paige's betrayal start to heal. Closure wasn't a single moment, but a series of small victories, of new memories replacing old wounds. One evening, as Mark and I sat on my porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he turned to me. "Kenzie, I want you to know I'm here for the long haul. No games, no lies." I looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity. "Thank you, Mark. That means more than you know." As the stars blinked into existence, I realized my life had come full circle. The chapters of betrayal and revenge were closed, replaced by hope and a genuine connection. With Mark by my side, I was ready to embrace the future, knowing that this time it was built on trust and mutual respect.